Welcome to Game Analysis Weekly, your one-stop shop for video game news, keeping up with the biggest stories so you don't have to. I'm your host, Edwin Garcia, and today we're talking about the Switch OLED, Sony's Deathloop-centric state of play, and the future of Assassin's Creed. All these stories and so much more on today's episode. Starting things off with the Nintendo Switch Pro, which is not the Switch Pro at all, it is the Nintendo Switch OLED model. The Pro, nope, that didn't pan out. That didn't end up being what we ended up seeing. I think all of us were expecting the next Switch SKU to be the rumored Switch Pro, the heavily rumored Switch Pro. And yet, it's not. It does have an OLED screen, so that part was true, but it's not more powerful, and you really only notice the enhancements when you're playing in handheld mode, because that's the only time they're really relevant, other than the LAN stuff. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about what this Switch OLED model actually has. The Nintendo Switch OLED model comes out October 8th, 2021. It is available for $350, so it is a $50 jump up from the regular standard Switch, and it's the newest member of the Switch family. It has a 7-inch OLED screen. The bezel is a bit smaller, so the console itself's not bigger. It's just kind of a little bit more screen real estate. It has a wide adjustable stand, which is actually a significant upgrade from the really flimsy kickstand. That's probably one of the early things that people complained about with the Switch, how flimsy the kickstand is. This does have one that covers pretty much the entire back of the screen, so it does make it a lot more stable. It also talks about, just the different angle adjustments you have with it to be able to optimize it for, using the kickstand. Again, not a lot there. It also has built-in wired LAN support. As a result, it does have just 2 USB ports, because inside the dock is now a port for a LAN cable to run through. It also has 64 gigabytes of internal storage, which is double what the base model usually has. It also has enhanced audio, just due to the system's onboard speakers. They just kind of adjusted the speakers to make it, I think, louder. It doesn't really go into what that enhanced audio has, and that's it. Same Joy-Cons, same everything else. And if you're interested in that LAN support, you can buy the dock separately. It comes in this sort of, I guess it's basically a white color, a little bit silvery of a color, as sort of the leading one they're promoting this for the Switch OLED model. But you can also get it in the standard black dock with the red and blue Joy-Con if you're interested in something that's a little bit more classic. But that's it. And I think by looking too at the trailer they have for it, it's very clear that this doesn't have like a whole lot going for it, because it's basically just a regular Switch commercial, and occasionally they're like, look at the kickstand, the screen is bigger, you can plug this LAN port in. Like, most of it is just a regular Switch commercial. Like, it could have just totally been used for any Switch, but with a few extra mentions of what the Switch OLED actually has. So definitely not like the must-have big upgrade I think a lot of us were hoping to get at this point. So where am I on this? It's complicated. My gut reaction was, and I think this happened to a lot of people on the internet, should I be mad? Like, should I be mad at this? I can't really be mad, because Nintendo never said, hey, we're doing a Switch Pro model, or they never hinted at anything like that at all. So really, what I'm actually mad at are a couple different people, I guess. Sources that turned out to not be true for whatever reason. And hey, there's already people talking about, oh, I think we'll see the Switch Pro later. Like, I think Switch Pro is still going to happen. Now we'll wonder, when is Switch Pro going to happen? So if you're in that camp of conspiracy theories, then to you weren't lied to. It just is coming later than is expected. And again, lied is kind of charged language. I don't think there was malice in the information that was distributed from like Bloomberg's reporting and a number of other sources, but clearly something went wrong somewhere in that pipeline of information, because it didn't end up happening, right? Like, the Switch Pro is not here. It does not exist. The updated model, the upgraded model, has very few features of what we were told we were going to get in a Switch Pro. So it's very clear that the Switch OLED is not the Switch Pro. And it's starting to seem like there is no Switch Pro. And again, mad's a little extreme, but I'm frustrated with that. And I guess I'm a little mad at myself too, because now that I think about it, and I was having this conversation with my brother earlier in the week, Nintendo doesn't really do significantly souped up models. They never have. And, you know, they're famous for having a whole bunch of SKUs, you know, looking back at the Game Boy era, the any of those eras, the DS certainly, having a bunch of different versions of the consoles, and they've had different versions of their consoles like forever. That's not new. But when can you name a version that was just significantly more powerful? You really can't. I mean, the new Nintendo 3DS is probably their most upgraded version of an existing SKU. And even that, you know, it did have some exclusives and things, but it wasn't like immensely more powerful than the 3DS. It was just a very significantly better model in its, you know, form factor and, you know, a number of other upgrades it had in the C-Stick integration and a bunch of other things. Like, I'm not saying that that wasn't like a significant upgrade, and that's the one I got because I hadn't had 3DS. So I was like, oh great, I'm gonna get this one. This is the best one. It's clearly the best one. Yay. But something comparable to, you know, the PS4 Pro, like those kind of upgrades, they don't really do that. So I don't really know why I believed it. That's my bad, I guess. But I just figured, you know, reputable sources, it's gonna pan out. And it just didn't. This is just a reminder that rumors are rumors are rumors. Until the company comes out and says it, it is technically not a known fact. So that's just the nature of what rumors are. And I think that's why it's so important to always couch things as being rumors. And I've said a bunch of times on this show that there are, you know, I think there are tiers to rumors. There are rumors that I talk about and there are rumors that I don't, because I feel like there are levels to this in terms of, you know, reputableness and trusting these sources. And this isn't to say that I'm never going to believe anything Bloomberg says, but I will say at this point in the news cycle, any more Switch Pro rumors I hear, you know, there's a chance I could still talk about them if I feel like they're worth discussing. But for me, I'm not buying any of it ever again. Like, I'm just not going to buy into it. And, you know, if Switch Pro happens or if the Switch 2 comes out, whatever the next thing from Nintendo hardware-wise comes out, it'll come out and I'll acknowledge it when it's out. But I'm done with this. As far as will I buy this model, right? Let's talk about actually like what it offers and whether or not it's enticing. For me, I don't think I'm going to buy this, which I feel like would be the ultimate flex for me as a Nintendo stan to not buy a Nintendo product. Like, I dream of being that person and I would like to be that person today. But for me, because I have the Animal Crossing Switch, which has a really cute dock and just a really nice design overall in terms of even the handheld, like the detailing on the back and everything, since I have that, I feel like I already had a little bit of an upgrade, and that did have better battery life than the day one launch model, which I also still own the day one launch model, and it is a little bit damaged. Like, there's some cracks in it. I don't know what happened to it. It just is. But for me, with the Switch OLED, I feel like if I bought that, I would want that to be my primary Switch. I'm personally not a fan of doing the whole, I have a docked version of the Switch and a handheld version of the Switch, and I decide what games I'm playing where. Like, I just feel like that complicates things way too much for me. So I'm not going to live that life. And I don't think this upgrade is quite enough for me to want to not use my Animal Crossing Switch anymore. I certainly think that if you don't own a Switch yet, this is a good model to get. But if you already own a Switch, I think it's fine, especially if you've had at least one other upgrade or one other different Switch, just from the collector's editions and stuff. If I didn't have this Switch, the Animal Crossing Switch, I would upgrade to the Switch OLED. But since I do, I'm like, I think it's okay. We got that look into the future of the Nintendo Switch, but what about the future of Assassin's Creed? For this, we head over to the official Ubisoft website, which posts an update on Assassin's Creed Infinity and the future of the Assassin's Creed franchise. The post reads, "From its action-adventure origins to its RPG revolution, Assassin's Creed has shown how the decisions we make now, no matter how big or small, can influence the events of the future. After both Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Assassin's Creed Valhalla shattered records, we find ourselves in that very moment where we know the decisions we're making for the franchise now will impact its future for years to come. Along with our announcement of new content coming for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we want to share some key updates on the talented and creative minds that will now be working in a collaborative cross-studio structure between Ubisoft Montreal and Ubisoft Quebec that will guide, grow, evolve, and define the overall future of Assassin's Creed. That includes an important upcoming early in development project codenamed Assassin's Creed Infinity. The new cross-studio collaborative structure will be led by Marc Alexis Coty, who will serve as executive producer on the Assassin's Creed franchise, one of the founding members of Ubisoft Quebec. Cote began his Assassin's Creed career working on Assassin's Creed Brotherhood before becoming creative director on Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and most recently senior producer on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Cote will be joined by Ubisoft Montreal's Etienne Alanier, brand director for Assassin's Creed for the last 10 years, and the respective teams in ensuring the Assassin's Creed franchise continues to exceed the expectations of fans who have been asking for a more cohesive approach to its development over the past several years. I'm going to jump down a bit just for sake of time. Rather than continuing to pass the baton from game to game, we profoundly believe this is an opportunity for one of Ubisoft's most beloved franchises to evolve into a more integrated and collaborative manner that's less centered on studios and more focused on talent and leadership, no matter where they are within Ubisoft. Most importantly, Assassin's Creed has always been developed by multicultural teams with various backgrounds and perspectives that have influenced the depiction of its characters, locations, and cultures. While we know there's always room for improvement, we believe this new structure allows us to ensure that diversity and representation within our teams continues to grow and match that of our players. Now, something that doesn't get mentioned in this official Ubisoft post is this rumor that has been brought up by Bloomberg, basically saying that Ubisoft's Assassin's Creed Infinity is going to be an ongoing game that's going to be similar to like Fortnite and Apex in terms of updates and keeping players engaged. So that's, really leaves a lot of room to speculate about what that actually means in practice for the franchise. Like, how can that really translate? Especially because Fortnite and Apex are like very different genres and styles of games. Again, that's like a very early on rumor. And again, with discussing rumors, like that's a pretty early on rumor. They're really early in this development. For all we know, that's an idea they have that they end up exploring, that they end up not using. So we don't really know what we're going to see from Assassin's Creed Infinity other than this crossed studio development. It does seem like they're aiming for a more cohesive thing. Live service definitely has elements of that. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. Certainly it seems like live service wouldn't really fit well with the formula, but maybe they're just like kind of shaking things up completely. It's really difficult to tell this early on, but that's what we know about Infinity so far. And on a more serious Ubisoft note, Ubisoft is at high risk for losing talent. This comes over from the Axios Gaming newsletter, which starts off with Ubisoft's new wave of risks. Ubisoft is becoming more explicit about the lingering fallout from its recent scandals, adding the, quote, occurrence of inappropriate behavior by employees as a new risk to the company. The big picture. Over the past year, Ubisoft has reacted to widespread allegations of misconduct against powerful men in the company with a mix of confidence that reform is possible and contrition from its CEO. The risk assessments appear as part of the company's 348-page universal registration document, which is stuffed with the company's description of its business and performance in the past year. It also upgraded the risk of failing to attract and retain talent from moderate the year prior to high. Despite Ubisoft's actions, some employees and fans say the company has not improved enough and given some accused workers a pass. Between the lines, Ubisoft says in the filing that it has taken allegations against employees, quote, seriously, making every effort to remedy it, but notes that, quote, it cannot provide an absolute guarantee that this type of risk will be controlled. It acknowledges that the problem can cost the company talent, damage its reputation, and, quote, could lead to a decrease in activity in our gaming and in revenue. Its listed approaches to mitigating that include mandatory training on harassment and sexism, the signing of a code of conduct, improvement of the company's whistleblowing platform, and tying portions of management pay to improving company culture. Several top Ubisoft officials were fired or quit last after they were accused of misconduct. Ubisoft said the impact was significant. Some positions could not be filled immediately, resulting in delays in decision-making, postponement of expenses, or the teams concerned losing of its bearings. To help address this, Ubisoft is creating lines of succession for senior roles, including creative directors and producers. Much of Ubisoft's new document is a copy and paste job from past years, so additions and subtractions are conspicuous. Ubisoft removed language from the prior year's document about how its unique employer culture helps ensure that the teams in place remain loyal. In its place, Ubisoft notes it has hired a VP of Global Diversity and Inclusion and a Chief People Officer to improve HR and enhance its abilities to develop and retain talented people. While 2020's document boasted that the company's board benefits from the long-term presence of its founders, a reference to the CEO and his 4 brothers on the board, the 2021 document notes that its board is mostly independent and 40% female. And again, shout out to the Axios Gaming newsletter because it's really well written, and I loved that breakdown where it had bullet points and sort of, what the information is there, what this means, contextualizing it, just really thorough and really succinct. Now, obviously, I think we should care about how people are treated just from a humanity standpoint and wanting the world to be a good and just place and a safe place for people to work and create and all of that stuff. But it is interesting bringing this into the business side of things and the very real impact of how these situations at Ubisoft with harassment can like have a trickle down effect to the games and the way they're developed and how the timeline goes and all of that. So I think it is important to note that, again, obviously you should care about this as a human being, but it does also have that gaming angle to it where we see a very real impact from these issues. Like they're more than just, you know, wanting to be an idealist. Like this does impact the games and the studio and the culture and the space and all of those things. So yeah, I really hope that we see improvements from Ubisoft, but I don't know. I am not very optimistic, and it is something that weighs on me a lot as we continue to, you know, look at these games and cover these games. Not to the point where I'm, you know, not going to play the games or engage with them necessarily, but it's something that I feel like underscores for me a lot of Ubisoft's content. Like that is in the back of my mind a lot, and I hope one day that those concerns can be mitigated by real change. On a lighter note, a Black woman recently got 2 world records for her vast vintage gaming collection. This comes from Ash Parrish over at Kotaku. And the woman in question is Linda Gilroy, who began collecting handheld gaming systems since she was 8 years old. Specifically, she has the largest collection of LCD and playable gaming systems. Her collection includes 1,599 LCD gaming systems and 2,430 playable gaming systems. Gilroy, an electrical engineer, wants to share her enthusiasm for gaming with children and teach them how to create gaming systems of their own. She also hopes to preserve her collection in a museum. And as usual, if you head over to the YouTube version of the podcast, you can see some of the footage from the Guinness Book of World Records sort of quick video on her collection. And it's really massive and just super fun. I think these games are just a really key part of childhood, certainly for me, getting these like random handhelds from, you know, a toy store or what have you, and just sort of having, you know, a good time with them. And they kind of offer this unique experience that you don't really get as much anymore or really at all. So it's definitely like a fun novelty, and I'm a real sucker for the box art of a lot of these collections as well. So yeah, it's a pretty cool story, and it's always nice to see women highlighted in games, especially women of color. So a big congrats to Linda Gilroy for the 2 world records. And continuing with the light-hearted news, Sony recently posted an ad for the PlayStation 5 in which the console was upside down. I saw this from a lot of different places, one of them being at Nebellion's Twitter account. And of course, the ad was taken down once Sony realized that the console was upside down. But I think it is a funny reminder of, you know, I think we all had that moment, right, when the PS5 sort of was announced or first shown off. It's like, okay, which way does this go? And like, I'd be lying if I said I didn't put in a disc from the wrong side, even when it's just vertical. Personally, I keep my PS5 vertical. We've all made those kind of mistakes or had those kind of questions on, hey, how does this actually go? Which part goes in this way? Like, how do you configure this for this different setup? If it's, you know, laying down, if it's standing up or whatever. And, you know, we're still in the early parts of the PS5 life cycle. So yeah, this is just like a little amusing flub that I think speaks to how also odd looking the console is, right? This isn't really a problem you have with most consoles because it's very clear what's right side up, what's upside down, what are the configurations. So even Sony sometimes gets that element wrong. Moving on to awards and accolades. GameIndustry.biz had their Best Places to Work awards. And here were the results. Respawn, Virtuos, I Am 8-Bit, and more triumph at 2021's US Best Places to Work awards. In total, they had selected 11 winners. For the highest scoring small companies, we had Big Run Studios, Phoenix Labs, Pragma Platform, and Virtuos. These are companies that are 10 to 40 staff members. The best mid-sized companies are 47 Communications, Intellivision, Parsec, Shell Games, and Servios. And the top large companies are Iron Galaxy Studios and Respawn Entertainment. Also a quick shout out to Iron Galaxy because they're from Chicago, which I'm also from Chicago. So shout out to Iron Galaxy. I know a couple people that work there. And these awards are determined by an in-depth survey of employees. In order to take part in this process, they had to fill in an employer form that asked questions around pay, holiday benefits, social activity, and a lot more. That then got marked by the GameIndustry.biz team and was worth 25% of the final score. The bulk of the awards are based on an employee survey. They had sent out almost 60 statements to staff to agree or disagree with. The survey covered numerous topics, including working environment, work-life balance, management, diversity, and more. And that was worth 75% of the final score. Alongside the 11 aforementioned badge winners, they also revealed a number of special awards, including the US Best Boss Award. The winners of those categories are as follows. The Diversity Award goes to Shell Games. Crisis Management Award goes to Big Run Studios. Corporate Social Responsibility Award goes to I Am 8-Bit. The Education Award goes to Virtuos. The Health and Wellbeing Award goes to Servios. And the US Best Boss Award goes to Hayden Blackman at Hangar 13. And I encourage y'all to go check out the article and read into these studios and companies if you're not familiar with some of them. And, you know, maybe just keep an eye out for their work and support, because obviously, you know, I don't think these awards mean that those places are perfect places to work by any means. And obviously, you know, there's plenty of, I imagine, room for error in this, since you're sort of taking, you know, a numerical approach to something that is very like subjective. So again, not saying, oh, these are all like perfect companies, but I think it's really cool that they took the time to do this research and highlight and award places that seem to at least have a good work culture and work-life balance and good benefits. So yeah, just keep an eye out for those companies and those studios. Most of these I'm pretty familiar with, but if there are ones that are new to you, you know, check it out and see what they're all about. And last but not least, let's do that Sony State of Play recap. Going into this, we knew that it would be about, I think, 8 or 9 minutes of Deathloop, and that this was titled as with Deathloop as the headliner, but we also knew that there'd be a lot of indie games shown. So let's dig into what we actually got. Really shocking me was the sequel to Moss, just because in the blog post leading up to this event, again, talking about expectations, they mentioned, hey, we're not going to talk about PSVR 2, which they still did not talk about PSVR 2. Like, they didn't get into the hardware at all, but because they couched it in that, I wasn't expecting at all to see anything VR related. I think having a sequel to Moss is such a nice win because it was so critically acclaimed when it came out, and it just really shows that they're paying attention to what was thriving on their platform and what people want to see more of, and making sure that they have that there. I think this also speaks to the potential of what the launch lineup for this new piece of hardware is going to be, and how powerful it actually might be out the gate. So again, that's Moss Book 2 is the official title of that game. Next, we saw a brand new IP about saving a beloved arcade. It is a loot-based shooter, and early access begins today on PS5 for it, and it's called Arcadegeddon. It has like a really colorful neon style kind of, you know, artistic direction, and I'm not gonna front, it basically looks like Fortnite from like the art design standpoint. Like, it has a lot of the same kind of cartoonish vibe, and even like the locomotion and the movement, and the just kind of the overall perspective is very reminiscent of that. But yeah, this one isn't something that I'm particularly excited to play, but you know, could be a sleeper hit. I don't know. It's just not really my style. Then we have Tribes of Midgar, which is going to be an action RPG that launches July 27th. And the team also broke down its post-launch plans during the State of Play update. The thing with this, because of like the setting for me, the like mythology setting, it does just remind me of Valheim, even though the gameplay is like very different. It's kind of giving, you know, Diablo vibes with you know, from a mechanical perspective. But yeah, this isn't something that I'm like super excited about particularly. It's just not, this one falls under the not for me category. Next up, we got to look at Fist, which stands for Forged in Shadow Torch. And it's, you play as a robo-rabbit named Rayton, who has a big old fist. So hence the name Fist. And honestly, I'm kind of into this. It's, you know, action-y, a bit of platformer action as well. All about highlighting the different combat abilities that are aided by this giant mechanical arm. And this game will be dropping on PS4 and PS5 on September 7th. So this is pretty much a bit up my alley, and it's actually not the first time we saw this. I just kind of forgot that this was a thing, but keep an eye out for Fist. We'll see how it is. Hunter Arena Legends was shown off. This game consists of 30-player melee matches, and the game is coming to PlayStation Plus on August 3rd. It includes solo, trio, and tag match modes. It is essentially a one-of-a-kind battle royale situation. Again, not my taste, but intriguing for those who are interested in that kind of genre. For a bit more of a heavy hitter, we had Sifu, or Sefu. Now I'm wondering, questioning myself on the pronunciation suddenly, but this is that beat 'em up that we saw earlier this year. The game will be coming out in 2022, so unfortunately we won't be getting it this calendar year, but it looks pretty good. Definitely highlighting a lot of that like ambiance with the sort of soft lighting, neon energy. You're seeing the character age throughout time, going from like early 40s to like 50s and so on, and you see a lot of like fights happening in like bar settings. At one point you also see the character pick up a bat and just start like whacking people with the bat, so I'm here for the bat action. Overall, it was a pretty enjoyable gameplay teaser, but really I think this game's gonna live and die on just how the combat ends up feeling, which you can't really, you know, deduce from a trailer, but it looks good and looks super stylish, and it seems like it has kind of a layered control scheme. Overall, it looks super good and super stylish. Early 2022 release on PS4 and PS5. Next up, we had Jet the Far Shore, an adventure game that is based on thoughtful exploration and inquisitive atmosphere. Here is the pitch. Jet the Far Shore invites you on an interstellar trip to carve out a future for people haunted by oblivion in this cinematic action adventure, as Scout May be the first to deploy to a mythic ocean planet. Take the helm of a jet and explore a vast unknown, skim low over waves, roar up pristine coastlines, and carve through otherworldly woods. Adapt to an intricate, systematic open world and preserve through adversity alongside an intimate ensemble cast in this story of courage, wonder, and regret. And I'm here for it. I like the art style. The pitch of exploration is cool. I love story-driven stuff, so I am definitely interested in checking this one out when it comes out later this year. We saw another Demon Slayer trailer, Demon Slayer: The Hinokami Chronicles. This is going to be dropping on PS4 October 15th. Again, this definitely falls into the category of if you're a fan of the franchise and, you know, this looks interesting to you to check out, then cool. If not, you know, as just a game divorced from the source material, it's not something that's appealing to me, but I can totally see why it'd be appealing to someone who was actually a fan of the series. Next up, we had the Lost Judgment trailer, and again, this game drops on PS4 and PS5 September 24th. Again, keeping in mind that this will have free-form combat. And something I was really surprised to see, details on the Death Stranding director's cut, which now that I think about it also means that I'm not sure that we'll see a bigger state of play from Sony anytime soon, because in my head I was thinking, oh, well, they're probably saving the Death Stranding director's cut for a more big deal marquee state of play, but since this was included in this state of play, which was a pleasant surprise, it makes me wonder if we'll see anything big. Conversely, if we do see anything big, you know, they must have like a pretty interesting lineup of things to showcase if they decide to put this here. Then again, of course, you know, it could just be a matter of the release date, which the release date for the Death Stranding director's cut is September 24th, so not a lot of time in between. Maybe it just made sense calendar-wise to put this here. Digging into some of the actual content, it includes new battles, advanced combat mechanics, including upgraded melee, maser guns, mounted machine guns, a firing range available, a cargo catapult, a support skeleton, a buddy bot, which everyone's kind of obsessed with because it looks adorable and creepy and weird. There's a jump ramp now. The fragile circuit, which like you can't tell me this isn't just a racing game at this point. New story missions, and later on the blog post, it was confirmed that it will have various PS5 features, including the ability to experience environment effects with the DualSense, getting closer to the world of Death Stranding with bespoke adaptive trigger resistance. You can hear sound effects come to life with the 3D audio. And then of course it boasts the, you know, faster load times and the ability to choose from 2 picture modes, including performance mode that's upscaled to 4K and up to 60 FPS, or fidelity mode in native 4K, both with ultra wide and HDR support. Now, if you already own the PS4 version of Death Stranding, you can get the PS5 Death Stranding Director's Cut Digital Deluxe Deluxe Edition upgrade. That's a lot of words for $10. Otherwise, you can get the director's cut for just $49.99, or you can get the digital deluxe edition for $59.99, which just comes with extra like avatar sets, you know, new in-game suit colors, like sort of just cosmetic additional things, which is really a reasonable price, I would say, considering all the additional content. I'm kind of shocked that they went such an affordable route. And lastly, we got to see Deathloop in action. I was pretty surprised by this kind of gameplay showcase of it, because honestly, you know, I've been sold in Deathloop since the beginning, so I'm at the point where I'm still watching this stuff just to keep up with it, but I already know I'm going to play it, so there's not much else to see in my opinion. But I really liked how they did this deep dive. They sort of talked more about what the actual flow of the gameplay is in terms of, you know, continuing on this time loop and all of those like sort of nuances. And another interesting thing that came out of this that was picked up by Kotaku, among, you know, other outlets, I'm sure, but Kotaku is where I personally saw it from, is that the exclusive deal is a 1-year deal. So it is the game is free to head to Xbox in 2022, which I just think is, you know, interesting given the you know, relationship between Xbox having acquired Bethesda at this point, this kind of being like a Bethesda exclusive game on PlayStation 5, even though Bethesda is now like an Xbox studio. So that just sort of shed some light on that information. It was in the sort of the fine print of one of the screens that I think a lot of people missed. I know certainly I missed that. So there's your answer for, you know, when we can expect to see this on Xbox. Not that that's guaranteed that we'll see it on Xbox at that time, because that just opens up the option for it to be there. Other notable highlights from the Deathloop trailer, they mentioned saving up Residium, which as you progress through Deathloop, you'll eventually discover something called Residium as you take down Eternalists and Visionaries. Once unlocked, Residium can be used between loops to lock in your favorite abilities or pieces of gear, meaning once you unlock something, you won't have to unlock it again if you spend Residium to add it to your arsenal permanently. And all these details are recapped on the PlayStation blog, which is what I'm reading from right now. We also discussed how the, you know, Deathloop works in the form of Reprise. Reprise will be one of your closest allies on Black Reef, reads the PlayStation blog post that says, thanks to this ability that you can unlock early on in the game, death isn't an automatic restart. If you're killed, you'll have 2 chances to do a little time rewinding without restarting the loop. Die a 3rd time, however, and the loop will end. It should be noted that time only rewinds for Colt when you expend a reprise. As you saw in the extended gameplay, everything else on Black Reef is unaffected by Reprise, meaning all enemies you killed before being taken down are still dead. Another way the loops function, they mentioned learning from each loop is vital to mastering the island and uncovering its secrets. Of course, there's the high-value information regarding the Visionaries and the routines, but there are also smaller conversations happening everywhere on the island. If you slow down and pay attention, you may learn something helpful, like maybe something a careless Eternalist lets slip about a back door into the Alcasis party. I'm not sure if I pronounced that phrase right, but I really like the idea of sort of having these more slow-paced elements interspersed through the action, because I think a lot of what we've seen before this was the kills and how crazy it gets, but it seems like there's a lot of value in digging around, looking for info, taking things slow, and just slowly learning the area and building up your abilities before kind of finally actually accomplishing your tasks at hand. And again, Deathloop is coming out September 14th, 2021. And those are all the stories we have for this week. Thank you so much for watching over on YouTube. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the bell. And for listening on podcast services, be sure to be subscribed on your platform of choice. And if possible, leave a review because it helps the show a whole lot. And as always, a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. You too can head to Patreon at patreon.com/GameOnasis. We have rewards as low as the $1 tier all the way up to the $25 tier. And as always, I will see y'all here next time. Bye.